Hey students, Pastor Caleb here. Hope you're having a great day. We're super bummed that we cannot gather with you in person tonight with the new coronavirus restrictions and with some of the positive cases that have occurred in our church. We thought it was best that we would take a couple weeks off. And so in spite of all that, we still wanted to invest in your walk with the Lord and encourage you, and even if it means doing it through video. So as you know, this school year we've been in a series called The Quest, and we've been seeking to find and live for Jesus. And tonight, as we talk about that, we're going to find that sometimes living for Jesus means loving people who think different than me. Obviously, we like to spend time with people who think like us and who dress like us and who have similar interests to us. And there's a part of that that's good and that's okay. Obviously, to be attracted to the same things and to have the same interests brings us together. But I think it's also important that we consider, how do we act towards people who think different than us? I think our text tonight will kind of confront the divisive nature of some of the things we're experiencing as a culture and cause us to think through, how do I treat someone who thinks different than me? You know, right now we're dealing with a lot of divisiveness in our country because of some of the things going on politically. Obviously, the election is still a very up front and center issue. Coronavirus and how we respond to that and how various people have differing perspectives on it. These things can very quickly cause hostility and divisiveness. And what we want to do as we look at our text tonight is ask the question and consider, how do I treat people who think different than me? I think what we'll find tonight as we look at this text is that we can love people who think different than us. And in fact, I think we're called to. And so look with me in Matthew chapter 9, in verse 9, and I'll just read and make some comments and hopefully be an encouragement to you tonight. First, in verse 9, we see, as Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me," and he rose and he followed him. So the first thing I want us to see is this: Jesus invites Matthew, a political outcast, to follow him. You see, Matthew was a Jewish man who was employed by the Roman government. The Israelites were under Roman authority, under Roman rule, and so that meant that they paid taxes to the Roman government. And Matthew, being a Jewish man, was actually enforcing the taxation of his own people while being paid and while being cared for by the Roman government. So, needless to say, he was not looked on fondly. He probably did not have many friends among the Jewish people. And yet Jesus, a Jewish rabbi, comes and invites him to follow him. The other thing we know about tax collectors is oftentimes they were corrupt. When we look back earlier in the Gospel of Matthew, John the Baptist, when he first starts his ministry and begins baptizing and calling people to repentance, he tells the tax collectors that they should no longer extort or take more than what they need to take. In other words, don't cheat people. Don't take more money than they owe. And so Matthew represented a government and a way of thinking that repulsed the Jewish people, and yet Jesus calls him to himself and asks him to follow him. A really important thing to see there, that Jesus and his disciples were made up of a group of people who didn't all think exactly the same way about various issues, and yet Jesus invites Matthew in. The second thing is this: Jesus, a Jewish teacher, reclines with sinners. Look with me in verse 10. It says that, and as Jesus reclined at table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. So not only did Jesus call Matthew a tax collector that many Jewish people didn't like, not only did he call him to follow him, but then he had dinner and a gathering time with other tax collectors and sinners that were friends of Matthew's. And so Jesus spends time, he gathers with people who are sinful and people who the culture and even the Jewish culture would have looked at as people who are outcasts. Jesus spends time with them. And then thirdly, we see this: Jesus, the rescuer of all nations, values an attitude of mercy more than works. And so verses 11 through 13 say, and when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" When he heard it, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." And so we see here that the Jewish rabbis, the Pharisees, the word Pharisee again literally means set apart one. They look at what Jesus is doing and they can't understand it. They can't understand why a Jewish rabbi would spend time with tax collectors, let alone sinners. And so they begin to ask the disciples, what is your teacher doing? Jesus overhears them and he confronts it. He calls it out. And what we find through Jesus is that he has come not to call people who are self-righteous or who are confident in their own works. He has come to call people who are sick and who are in need of redemption. And so he is visiting with people who are sinners, dubbed that way by the culture, and he is gathering with people who, at least in the eyes of Jewish people, he shouldn't have been around. And so what we see from these three things is that Jesus demonstrates a love for people, not based on what they do, but based on who they are. See, the culture and even the Jewish people, they saw the tax collector, they saw the sinners, and they dubbed them sinners, and they dubbed them not worth being around because of what they did. And yet Jesus valued them for who they were. And Jesus wanted to have a relationship with them in spite of what they had done. The second thing is Jesus' mission was to seek and to find and to heal those who were sick. So Jesus is on the lookout for people. His mission is to restore people to relationship with the Father. And so he is not going to go spend time with people who think that they're justified in their own works and abilities. He's going to go to the people who need help. And then thirdly, we learn that God desires us to demonstrate love for others more than a demonstration of good works. And so here's what I mean by this. I think what we see from the Pharisees is that they were very confident in their ability to do good. And they were confident in their system of beliefs, so much so that they held onto those more tightly than they did loving people who were on the other side of it. See, I think it's easy for us to look at people on the other side of an argument, and I think it's easy for us to look at people who are on the other side of a system of belief and to dub them as the enemy. It's far easier to do that than it is to love them and to seek their restoration with God. And so Jesus is not so concerned about the good works that we do as people or the Pharisees did. He's more concerned about our heart and our love for people who think different than us. And so what we see here is just a few thoughts that I want to challenge you with. The next time you find yourself hearing something that you disagree with or that angers you, I want you to think about why. Why am I feeling this way? Why is this reaction welling up in me? Because I think what we need to fight for is we need to seek to see people on the other side of arguments as people, and we need to love them. Do we need to agree with them? No, of course we don't, but we need to love them. And so here's what I want to challenge you to do. Next time you see a post on Twitter or on Instagram, or the next time you see a video on YouTube and the content causes you to be uncomfortable or maybe it upsets you, I want you to do three things. The first thing I want you to do is to sincerely listen to the other side. Listen to what that person is saying that upsets you and try to understand where they're coming from. Second thing I want you to do is I want you to guard your heart. Guard your heart against developing a critical spirit or an anger against that person. We need to protect our heart, for from it flow all the issues of life. I can disagree with someone without being angry towards them. I can disagree with them without being unkind towards them. However, it's far easier to dub them as an enemy and to be divisive against them. So I want to protect my heart. And then thirdly, I want to challenge us to pray for them. So if I have a disagreement with someone, if even politically speaking, if someone's on the opposite side of me, and I find myself disagreeing with them and even being annoyed with them, I think what I need to do in that moment is I need to pray for that person. Because here's what prayer does. It aligns my heart and my mind with the heart of God. Is it important for us to stand on what we believe? Is it important for us to have an opinion on various issues? Sure it is. But I think it's even more important that we demonstrate a love for people. People are valuable to God because of who they are, not because of what they do. And so the bottom line I want to leave you with tonight is that living for Jesus means loving people who are different than me. See, here's the thing. We have the opportunity in our day and in our culture right now to live different, to be countercultural like Jesus was. We can offer love and respect and kindness to people who are different than us and who think different than us. Because in our culture today, there's going to be more divisiveness, there's going to be more conflict. So let's be people who live for Jesus by loving others who are different than us. Hope you guys have a great rest of the night, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.